The fire crackled under a sky bruised with twilight, its orange tongues licking the cool air of the Nebraska prairie. The old Miller farm, a patchwork of sagging barns and endless cornfields, sprawled under the weight of silence, broken only by the pop of burning logs and the distant hum of crickets. 5 friends, all hovering around 19 or 20, had gathered in a clearing near the farmhouse, their laughter rising like sparks into the dusk. The air smelled of damp earth and charred wood, the kind of scent that clung to your clothes and whispered of simpler times. They'd come for a night of stories, beers, and the kind of reckless freedom only youth could afford. By morning, 4 of them would be gone. Jake Miller, the only one born and raised on this land, tossed another log onto the fire. His hands, calloused from years of baling hay and mending fences, moved with the ease of someone who belonged to the earth. The farm had been his family's for 3 generations, though now it stood half abandoned, the fields leased to a neighbor and the house a creaking relic of better days. Jake's brown eyes caught the firelight as he grinned at his friends, his flannel shirt rolled to his elbows. "Y'all better not burn the damn place down," he teased, kicking a stray ember back into the pit. Across from him, Sarah leaned back in a folding chair, her blonde hair spilling over her shoulders. She was the planner, the one who'd texted everyone a week ago with the idea for this getaway. Her internship in Lincoln had left her craving the open sky, and Jake's farm was the perfect escape. She sipped a beer, her sharp green eyes scanning the group. "Relax, Farmer Jake. We're not that reckless." Next to her, Ethan sprawled on a blanket, his lanky frame stretched out like he owned the place. He was the joker, always quick with a quip, though his humor hid a restlessness that kept him bouncing between odd jobs. He flicked a bottle cap into the fire, watching it sizzle. "Speak for yourself, Sarah. I'm here to cause chaos." Clara, quieter, sat cross-legged on the ground, sketching the fire in a small notebook. Her dark curls fell over her face as she worked, her fingers smudged with charcoal. She'd grown up in a nearby town, close enough to know the rhythm of rural life but not as tethered to it as Jake. Her art was her escape, and tonight, the fire's dance was her muse. She barely looked up as Ethan's bottle cap flew past her. Last was Mia, perched on a stump, her phone forgotten in her pocket for once. Her city upbringing made her the odd one out, always marveling at the stars or the way the wind carried the scent of alfalfa. She hugged her knees, her dark eyes wide. "This place feels like it's hiding something," she said, half joking, her voice soft against the fire's crackle. Jake chuckled, but his eyes flicked to the shadowed cornfields beyond the clearing. The farm had always felt alive to him, its creaks and groans like a language only he understood. He shook off the thought and grabbed another beer from the cooler. "Only thing hiding out here is coyotes. And maybe my old man's moonshine stash." The night deepened, the fire casting long shadows that twisted over the uneven ground. They swapped stories, Ethan's exaggerated tale of a bar fight, Sarah's rant about her boss, Clara's quiet memory of catching fireflies as a kid. Mia, still new to the group, listened more than she spoke, her gaze drifting to the dark edges of the clearing. Jake noticed but said nothing, chalking it up to her city nerves. Around midnight, the air turned chilly, and the group huddled closer to the fire. The farmhouse, a weathered 2-story relic with peeling paint, loomed behind them, its windows dark. Jake had offered to let them crash inside, but Sarah insisted on camping out to feel the vibe. They'd pitched 2 tents near the fire, their silhouettes swaying in the breeze. The cornfields stretched out in every direction, a sea of rustling stalks that seemed to whisper secrets. Mia stood, stretching. "I'm grabbing my jacket from the truck." She headed toward Jake's old Ford, parked 100 yards away near the barn. The others barely noticed, lost in a debate about whether Ethan could outrun a coyote. Minutes passed. The fire popped, sending a shower of sparks skyward. Clara glanced up from her sketch. "She's taking forever." Jake frowned, peering into the darkness. The truck's outline was just visible, its rusted frame glinting under the moon. "Mia," he called. No answer. The wind carried a low moan, the kind the prairie made when it was restless. He stood, dusting off his jeans. "Probably just messing with us." Sarah rolled her eyes but stood too, her flashlight cutting a thin beam through the night. "Mia, quit screwing around." Her voice echoed, unanswered. The group fell silent, the fire's warmth suddenly insufficient. Ethan grabbed a stick, poking at the coals like it would summon her back. Clara closed her notebook, her fingers tight around the edges. Jake's boots crunched on the dry grass as he led the way to the truck. The air felt heavier now, thick with the scent of corn and something sharper, like metal or rust. The truck's driver's side door hung open, Mia's jacket still folded on the seat. Her phone lay on the ground, its screen cracked but glowing faintly, showing a missed call from Sarah. "She was just here," Sarah said, her voice tight. She swung the flashlight around, illuminating the barn's sagging doors and the endless rows of corn. "Mia." Ethan's usual grin was gone. Maybe she wandered off? Got lost in the corn? Jake shook his head, his jaw tight. He knew this land like his own pulse. The cornfields were disorienting, sure, but Mia wasn't the type to wander. He crouched, studying the ground. The dirt was scuffed, a single footprint, hers, judging by the sneaker tread, pointing toward the barn. Beyond that, the earth was smooth, like it had been raked clean. Clara's voice was barely a whisper. "Jake, what's that?" She pointed to the barn door, where a faint scratch mark gleamed in the flashlight's beam. It was fresh, the wood splintered, as if something had been dragged across it. Jake's stomach twisted. He'd fixed that door last week, and it had been solid. He pushed the barn door open, the hinges screaming in protest. The air inside was stale, thick with the smell of old hay and motor oil. Sarah's flashlight swept over the space, catching glints of rusted tools, a broken tractor, and stacks of moldy bales. In the corner, a pile of burlap sacks had collapsed, spilling grain across the floor. Jake's eyes narrowed. He'd stacked those sacks himself, neat and tight, 2 days ago. "Someone's been here," he said, his voice low. He moved deeper into the barn, his boots stirring dust that danced in the light. At the far end, a ladder led to the hayloft. Something glinted at its base, a small, silver earring, one of Mia's. Jake picked it up, his fingers cold. "This is hers." Sarah's breath hitched. She wouldn't just leave it. "Something's wrong." Ethan, trying to keep things light, forced a laugh. "Come on, she's probably pranking us. Right?" But his eyes darted to the shadows, betraying his unease. Clara stayed near the door, her sketchbook clutched to her chest. "Jake, you know this place. Is there anywhere she could have gone? A cellar, a shed?" Jake hesitated. The farm was full of forgotten corners, old wells, overgrown paths, a storm cellar his dad had sealed years ago after a flood. But Mia didn't know those places. She'd barely been here a day. He opened his mouth to answer when a sound cut through the night, a low, rhythmic thump, like something heavy striking wood, coming from the far side of the barn. The group froze. Sarah's flashlight wavered, casting jagged shadows. The thump came again, steady, deliberate, from the direction of the old grain silo. Jake's heart pounded. That silo hadn't been used in years, its door rusted shut. He'd checked it last month, and it was empty, nothing but cobwebs and rot. "Stay here," he said, but Sarah grabbed his arm. "No way. We're coming with you." They moved as a unit, their footsteps muffled by the hay-strewn floor. The silo loomed outside, a hulking shadow against the moonlit sky. Its metal sides were pitted with rust, the door chained shut with a padlock Jake hadn't touched in years. The thumping stopped as they approached, replaced by an eerie silence that made the crickets sound deafening. Ethan reached for the chain, but Jake stopped him. "Wait." He knelt, his flashlight catching something in the dirt, a scrap of fabric, torn and stained, caught on a jagged piece of metal at the silo's base. It was blue, the same color as Mia's shirt. Sarah's voice cracked. "Jake, what the hell is going on?" Before he could answer, the thumping resumed, louder now, joined by a faint, muffled sound, like a voice, or a cry, trapped inside the silo. Jake's blood ran cold. He yanked at the chain, the rusted links groaning but holding fast. The padlock was new, shiny, not the one he remembered. Someone had been here. Someone who didn't belong. He turned to the others, his face pale in the moonlight. "We need to get that door open. Now." The Nebraska night pressed close, the air heavy with the scent of rust and damp cornstalks. The old grain silo loomed over the four friends, its rusted surface swallowing the moonlight. The muffled thumping from inside had stopped, leaving only the restless hum of crickets and the faint creak of the barn behind them. Jake Miller gripped the shiny new padlock on the silo's door, his knuckles white. The lock wasn't his, someone had placed it here, and recently. The torn scrap of Mia's blue shirt, snagged on a jagged edge of the silo, fluttered in the breeze, a silent accusation. Sarah's flashlight beam jittered across the silo's door, her voice sharp with panic. "Jake, we need to get in there." That was her. I heard her. Her blonde hair stuck to her sweat-dampened forehead, her earlier confidence fraying at the edges. Ethan, usually quick with a joke, was silent, his lanky frame tense as he scanned the darkness. "This is messed up, man. Who locks a silo? Nobody's been out here in years, right?" His eyes flicked to Jake, searching for reassurance that didn't come. Clara clutched her sketchbook like a shield, her dark curls falling over her face as she whispered, "We should call someone. The sheriff, maybe." Her voice trembled, but there was a stubborn edge to it, like she was trying to hold herself together. Jake shook his head, his jaw tight. "No signal out here. Closest tower's 10 miles away, and the landline in the house hasn't worked since Dad left." He didn't add that the nearest sheriff's station was a 40-minute drive, or that the farm's isolation, once a point of pride, now felt like a trap. He tugged at the padlock again, the chain rattling. "We need a bolt cutter. There's one in the barn." The group retraced their steps, the barn's sagging doors groaning as they re-entered. The air inside was thick, the smell of moldy hay and old motor oil sharper now, like the farm itself was holding its breath. Jake led them to a cluttered workbench in the corner, where tools hung on a rusted pegboard. His hands moved with practiced ease, sifting through wrenches and pliers until he found the bolt cutter, its handles worn smooth from years of use. His father had taught him how to fix anything on this land, fences, tractors, even the silo's old door. That knowledge felt like a lifeline now. As Jake grabbed the cutter, Sarah's flashlight caught something on the workbench, a small, leather-bound notebook, half buried under a pile of oily rags. It wasn't there yesterday when Jake had been tinkering with a tractor part. He frowned, picking it up. The cover was weathered, the edges frayed, but the pages were crisp, like it had been handled recently. He flipped it open, revealing tight, slanted handwriting he didn't recognize. The first page read, "Keep it hidden. They'll come for it." "What the hell is that?" Ethan asked, peering over Jake's shoulder. His voice was too loud in the quiet barn, making Clara flinch. "Dunno," Jake muttered, slipping the notebook into his back pocket. His gut told him it was important, but there was no time to dwell on it. "Let's move." Back at the silo, Jake worked the bolt cutter with grim determination. The chain snapped with a metallic clink, and the padlock hit the dirt. Sarah pushed forward, yanking the door open. It screeched on its hinges, revealing a black void inside. The smell hit them first, musty grain, damp metal, and something acrid, like burnt plastic. Sarah's flashlight pierced the darkness, illuminating a concrete floor littered with stray kernels and cobwebs. The silo was empty, save for a single object in the center, a crumpled blanket, stained and bunched up like it had been tossed there in a hurry. Sarah rushed to it, dropping to her knees. "Mia," she called, her voice echoing off the curved walls. She shook the blanket, revealing nothing but more dust. Her hands trembled as she stood, her eyes wild. "She was here. We heard her." Jake swept his own flashlight around, his heart sinking. The silo's walls were smooth, no ladders or exits except the door they'd entered. No sign of Mia, no footprints, no blood, just the blanket and that faint, burnt smell that made his skin crawl. He crouched, noticing a faint scuff mark near the blanket, like something heavy had been dragged across the floor. It stopped abruptly at the wall, as if whatever it was had vanished. Ethan paced, his hands raking through his hair. "This doesn't make sense. We heard something. That thumping, it was real." He kicked at the blanket, sending a cloud of dust into the air. "What if she's hurt? What if someone took her?" Clara, still near the door, pointed her flashlight at the ground outside. "Jake, look." Her voice was steady now, her artist's eye catching details the others missed. In the dirt, just beyond the silo's threshold, was a faint tire track, not deep enough for a car, but maybe a wheelbarrow or an ATV. It led toward the cornfields, disappearing into the dense rows of stalks. Jake's mind raced. The farm had no ATV, and the nearest neighbor, Old Man Carver, hadn't been out this way in months. Jake had checked the fields yesterday, and there'd been no tracks then. Someone had been here, moving fast, covering their trail. He thought of the notebook in his pocket, the cryptic warning, "Keep it hidden." Hidden what? And who were they? "We follow the track," Jake said, his voice firm despite the knot in his chest. He led the way, the others trailing close. The cornfield swallowed them, the stalks towering over their heads, their leaves rustling like whispers. The tire track was faint, weaving through the rows, but Jake's years on the farm gave him an edge. He knew every ditch and furrow, every shortcut through the maze. The track led toward the old creek bed, a dry gully that cut through the property like a scar. As they walked, Sarah's flashlight flickered, the batteries weakening. "This is insane," she muttered. "Why would someone take her? She didn't know anyone out here." Her voice cracked, betraying the guilt she felt for dragging them all to the farm. Ethan, trying to keep things together, nudged her shoulder. "Hey, we'll find her. She's probably just lost, right? Wandering around, cursing us for picking such a creepy spot." Clara shot him a look. Ethan, stop. This isn't a joke. She turned to Jake, her eyes searching. You know this place better than anyone. Is there somewhere she could be? Somewhere someone could hide her? Jake hesitated. The farm was vast, dotted with forgotten places, an old well, a collapsed shed, the sealed storm cellar. But the creek bed was where his instincts pulled him. It was out of sight, overgrown with weeds, a perfect place to hide something. He didn't want to say it out loud, not yet. The creek bed's our best bet, he said. If she's out here, that's where we'll find a clue. The gully came into view, a dark slash in the earth, its banks tangled with roots and brambles. The tire track stopped at the edge, as if whatever made it had vanished. Jake knelt, his flashlight catching a glint in the dirt, a small, metal key, half buried under a clump of grass. It was old, tarnished, with a faint engraving, MC. His breath caught. MC could be Mia Carter, but it could also be something else. His grandfather's initials were Martin Miller, and he'd hidden keys around the farm for years, a habit from his paranoid days. Sarah grabbed the key, her hands shaking. This is hers, isn't it? It has to be. Jake wasn't so sure. He scanned the creek bed, his flashlight catching something else, a piece of rope, frayed and knotted, caught in the brambles. It looked out of place, too clean for something that had been there long. He reached for it, but Ethan stopped him, pointing upstream. What's that? In the distance, barely visible in the moonlight, was a shape, a low, wooden structure, half collapsed and overgrown with weeds. Jake's stomach twisted. It was the old pump house, abandoned since the creek dried up a decade ago. He'd forgotten it was even there, hidden by years of neglect. But now, its door hung ajar, and a faint light flickered inside, like a candle or a phone screen. Sarah took a step toward it, but Jake grabbed her arm. Wait. We don't know what's in there. His voice was low, his eyes locked on the light. The farm was his, but tonight it felt foreign, like it was keeping secrets even from him. Clara's voice broke the silence. That light, it's moving. She was right. The flicker shifted, as if someone was inside, pacing. Or waiting. Jake gripped the bolt cutter, its weight grounding him. We go together. No one splits up. His heart pounded as they approached, the cornfields rustling behind them, the night alive with unseen eyes. The pump house door creaked, and the light inside went out, plunging them into darkness. The Nebraska night clung to the group like damp cloth, the air thick with the scent of dry earth and decaying wood. The old pump house squatted at the edge of the dry creek bed, its sagging roof and splintered walls barely distinguishable from the tangled brambles around it. The flickering light they'd seen moments ago was gone, leaving only the moon's pale glow to guide them. Jake Miller led the way, his boots crunching on the gravelly soil, the bolt cutter heavy in his hand. The faint rustle of cornfields behind them felt like a chorus of whispers, urging them forward, or warning them back. Sarah clutched the tarnished key they'd found, its engraved MC catching the moonlight. Her breath came in short, sharp bursts, her earlier confidence eroded by the weight of Mia's absence. That was her in there, she insisted, her voice low but fierce. It had to be. Why else would there be a light? Ethan, trailing close, kept his eyes on the pump house's open door, his usual bravado replaced by a tense silence. He gripped a stick he'd picked up from the creek bed, as if it could protect them from whatever lay ahead. Clara stayed near Jake, her sketchbook tucked under her arm, her dark eyes scanning the shadows. She hadn't spoken since the light went out, but her fingers twitched, itching to draw the scene as if capturing it could make sense of the fear coiling in her chest. Jake stopped a few feet from the pump house, his flashlight beam slicing through the darkness. The door hung crooked on its hinges, the wood swollen and splintered. The air carried a new smell now, something sharp, like gasoline or paint thinner, cutting through the musty decay. He raised a hand, signaling the others to stay back. "Let me check first," he said, his voice steady despite the pulse hammering in his throat. He knew this land, every furrow, every fence post, but the pump house felt wrong, like a stranger had walked through his home and left the doors ajar. He stepped closer, the bolt cutter raised like a weapon. The door creaked as he nudged it open, revealing a small, cluttered space. The floor was packed dirt, littered with rusted pipes and broken crates. A single shelf sagged against the far wall, holding a few dusty cans and a cracked lantern, the source of the light, maybe, though it was dark now. Jake's flashlight swept the corners, finding nothing but cobwebs and shadows. No Mia. No sign of struggle. Just the faint, acrid smell that made his eyes sting. Sarah pushed past him, her flashlight shaking. "Mia," she called, her voice echoing in the cramped space. The sound bounced back, hollow and unanswered. She spun, her beam catching a glint on the floor, a small, metal object half buried in the dirt. She knelt, digging it out with trembling fingers. It was a locket, silver and dented, its chain snapped. She opened it, revealing a faded photo of a young girl, no older than 10, with Mia's dark eyes and shy smile. "This is hers," Sarah whispered, her voice breaking. "She showed it to me once. It was her mom's." Her eyes met Jake's, wide with fear. She'd never leave this behind. Jake's stomach twisted. He took the locket, turning it over in his calloused hands. The clasp was bent, as if it had been torn off. He thought of the scrap of Mia's shirt, the earring in the barn, the key in the creek bed. Too many pieces, none of them fitting together. He glanced at the shelf, noticing a smear of something dark on one of the cans, grease, maybe, or paint. It was fresh, glistening in the light. Ethan, hovering near the door, shifted uneasily. "This place is giving me the creeps. No one's here, guys. Maybe she dropped the locket earlier, and we're chasing ghosts." His voice wavered, betraying his doubt. He stepped outside, scanning the creek bed. "We should check the fields again. She could have wandered off." Clara shook her head, her voice soft but firm. "She didn't wander. The tire track, the locket, the light, someone was here. Someone who didn't want to be seen." She pointed to the floor, where faint scuff marks led from the shelf to the back wall. "Look. It's like something was dragged." Jake followed her gaze, his flashlight illuminating the marks. They were shallow, irregular, like a heavy bag had been pulled across the dirt. He moved to the back wall, a patchwork of rotting planks. One board was slightly askew, its nails loose. He pressed it, and it shifted, revealing a narrow gap, just wide enough for a person to slip through. The gasoline smell was stronger here, sharp enough to make him cough. "There's a way out," he said, his voice low. He pushed the board aside, exposing a dark tunnel of earth and roots, barely 3 feet wide. It sloped downward, disappearing into the ground. "This isn't on any map of the farm. Dad never mentioned it." Sarah's eyes widened. "A tunnel? Out here?" She gripped the locket tighter, her knuckles white. Mia could be down there. Ethan backed away, his stick raised. "No way I'm going into some creepy-ass tunnel. This is how horror movies start, man." Clara shot him a glare. "We don't have a choice. If she's hurt, or trapped," she trailed off, her eyes on the tunnel's mouth. "Jake, you know this land. Could this be part of the old irrigation system? Or a cellar?" Jake frowned, his mind racing. The farm had been his grandfather's before his father's, and old Martin Miller had been full of secrets, hidden stashes, locked sheds, cryptic notes about protecting the land. The notebook in Jake's pocket felt heavier now, its warning, "Keep it hidden. They'll come for it," echoing in his head. He shook it off. Maybe. The creek used to run closer to the pump house. Could be an old drainage line. But this, he gestured to the tunnel. "This feels new." He shone his flashlight into the darkness, revealing rough-hewn walls braced with wooden beams. The beam caught something on the ground, a smudge of red, too bright to be rust. Blood? Paint? He didn't say it out loud, but Sarah's sharp intake of breath told him she'd seen it too. "We go in," Jake said, his voice firm. "But we stay together. No splitting up." He glanced at Ethan, who looked ready to bolt. "You with us?" Ethan swallowed, nodding. "Yeah, fine. But if we die, I'm haunting you first." Clara tucked her sketchbook into her jacket, her face pale but determined. "We need to mark our way. In case we get lost." She pulled a piece of charcoal from her pocket and scratched an arrow on the tunnel's entrance, its black line stark against the wood. Jake led the way, crouching to fit through the narrow opening. The tunnel was tight, the air cold and damp, carrying that same acrid smell. The walls pressed close, roots dangling like skeletal fingers. His flashlight flickered, the batteries weakening, but it was enough to see the ground, more scuff marks, and another smudge of red, leading deeper. His heart pounded, every instinct screaming to turn back, but Mia's locket in his pocket kept him moving. The tunnel sloped downward, then leveled out, stretching farther than he'd expected. After a few minutes, it opened into a small chamber, maybe 10 feet across, carved from the earth. The air was thicker here, the gasoline smell overwhelming. Jake's flashlight swept the space, revealing a wooden crate in the center, its lid pried open. Inside were cans, unlabeled, their metal surfaces slick with that same dark grease from the pump house. Nearby, a pile of ropes and a folded tarp lay in a heap, as if someone had left in a hurry. Sarah knelt by the crate, her hands shaking as she lifted one of the cans. "What is this? Fuel? Chemicals?" She sniffed it, then recoiled. It's not gasoline. I don't know. Jake's eyes narrowed. He'd seen enough of the farm's machinery to know this wasn't standard. The cans were too new, too clean for a place abandoned for years. He thought of the notebook again, the tire track, the locked silo. Someone was using his land, and Mia had stumbled into it. Clara, examining the ropes, froze. Jake, look at this. She held up a length of rope, its end frayed and stained with the same red smudge. This isn't old. Someone was here recently. Ethan, standing near the tunnel's exit, suddenly stiffened. Guys, you hear that? His voice was barely a whisper. From the darkness beyond the chamber, a faint sound echoed, a low, rhythmic scrape, like metal on stone. It was slow, deliberate, coming closer. Jake's grip tightened on the bolt cutter. He swung his flashlight toward the sound, but the beam caught only shadows. The scrape grew louder, then stopped, replaced by a single, sharp thud. Sarah grabbed his arm, her nails digging into his skin. Clara's charcoal dropped to the ground, her eyes wide. Someone's out there, Ethan hissed, backing toward the crate. We need to go. Now. But before they could move, a shadow flickered at the edge of the chamber, a figure, tall and lean, silhouetted against the tunnel's mouth. It didn't speak, didn't move, just stood there, watching. Then, with a soft rustle, it was gone, leaving only the echo of footsteps fading into the dark. The air in the underground chamber was suffocating, thick with the acrid tang of chemicals and the weight of fear. Jake Miller's flashlight trembled in his hand, its beam slicing through the darkness where the shadowy figure had stood moments ago. The echo of retreating footsteps lingered, a haunting rhythm swallowed by the tunnel's depths. Sarah clutched the dented locket, her breath ragged, while Ethan gripped his stick like a lifeline, his eyes darting to the chamber's exit. Clara, her charcoal mark smudged on the ground, stood frozen, her artist's instincts cataloging every detail, the crate of unmarked cans, the frayed rope, the red smudge that might be blood. We can't stay here, Jake said, his voice low but steady, honed by years of navigating the farm's unpredictable dangers. He tightened his grip on the bolt cutter, its cold metal grounding him. Whoever that was, they know we're here. His mind raced, piecing together the clues, Mia's torn shirt, the new padlock on the silo, the cryptic notebook in his pocket, and now this hidden chamber. The farm, his family's legacy, felt like a stranger's territory, its secrets unraveling with every step. Sarah nodded, her green eyes fierce despite the tremor in her hands. We follow them. They might have Mia. She shoved the locket into her pocket, her flashlight flickering as she pointed it toward the tunnel's continuation. The beam caught more scuff marks, leading deeper into the earth. Ethan shook his head, his lanky frame tense. Follow them? Are you nuts? That guy could be waiting with a knife or something. His voice cracked, betraying the bravado he'd clung to earlier. We should go back, get to the house, find a way to call for help. Clara's voice cut through, soft but firm. There's no signal, Ethan. And the house is too far. If Mia's down there, we're her only chance. She knelt, picking up her charcoal and marking another arrow on the chamber's wall, its black line a small act of defiance against the unknown. Jake hesitated, his instincts torn. The tunnel was a risk, but so was retreating through the open fields, exposed under the moonlight. The notebook in his pocket, keep it hidden. They'll come for it, not at him. Was this what they were after? The cans? Something else buried on his land? He thought of his grandfather, Martin, whose paranoia had left hidden keys and locked sheds scattered across the farm. This tunnel, this chamber, felt like his doing, but why? We move forward, Jake decided, his tone final. Stay close, keep quiet. He led the way, crouching as the tunnel narrowed, its walls pressing tighter, roots scraping his shoulders. The chemical smell grew stronger, burning his throat. The scuff marks continued, joined by more red smudges, irregular and streaked, as if something, or someone, had been dragged. The tunnel twisted, then opened into another chamber, smaller and cluttered. Jake's flashlight swept over a pile of crates, more unmarked cans, and a rusted shovel leaning against the wall. A single lantern hung from a beam, its wick cold but its glass smudged with fresh soot. Someone had been here, and not long ago. Sarah's beam caught a scrap of paper pinned under a can, its edges torn. She grabbed it, unfolding it to reveal a crude map, a sketch of the farm, with the pump house and creek bed marked in red ink. A circle was drawn near the northern field, labeled Drop. This is your land, Sarah said, shoving the map toward Jake. What's in the northern field? Jake studied it, his brow furrowing. Nothing. Just more corn. There's an old irrigation ditch out there, but it's been dry for years. He traced the circle, his finger pausing. His grandfather had once mentioned a safe spot in the northern field, a place to hide supplies during hard times. Jake had thought it was just another of Martin's stories, but now? Clara pointed to a corner of the chamber, where a pile of dirt was disturbed, as if recently dug. Look at that. She knelt, her fingers brushing the soil, revealing a small, metal box, its lid dented but locked. The same MC engraving marked its surface, matching the key they'd found. Sarah fumbled for the key, her hands shaking as she fitted it into the lock. It clicked, and the lid sprang open, revealing a single item, a folded photograph, yellowed with age. It showed a young man, maybe 20, standing beside a tractor, his face eerily familiar. "That's you," Ethan said, his voice hollow. "Jake, that's your face." Jake stared, his blood running cold. The man wasn't him, but the resemblance was uncanny, same brown eyes, same sharp jaw. It had to be his father, or maybe his grandfather, Martin, in his youth. But why was it hidden here? And why now? He tucked the photo into his pocket with the notebook, his mind spinning. "This doesn't help us find Mia," he said, forcing focus. "We need to keep moving." The scrape of metal on stone echoed again, closer now, from the tunnel ahead. Jake swung his flashlight, catching a glimpse of movement, a shadow darting around a bend. "Hey!" he shouted, his voice bouncing off the walls. The group froze, listening as the footsteps faded, replaced by a low, guttural sound, like a groan, or a muffled cry. Sarah bolted toward the sound, ignoring Jake's warning. "Mia!" she yelled, her flashlight bobbing as she ran. Jake cursed, chasing after her, the others close behind. The tunnel curved sharply, then ended abruptly at a wooden hatch set into the ceiling. A rusted ladder led up to it, its rung slick with moisture. The groan came again, faint but unmistakable, from above. Jake climbed first, the bolt cutter slung over his shoulder. The hatch was heavy, its hinges screaming as he pushed it open. Moonlight flooded in, revealing the northern field, a sea of cornstalks swaying under the night sky. The air was fresher here, laced with the sweet scent of alfalfa, but the chemical tang lingered, clinging to their clothes. Jake pulled himself up, scanning the field. The irrigation ditch was nearby, its banks overgrown with weeds. A faint trail, more scuff marks, led toward it. Sarah climbed out, her eyes wild. That was her. I know it was. She pointed to the ditch, where a pile of broken stalks lay, as if something heavy had crashed through. "She's there. She has to be." They followed the trail, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. The ditch was shallow, its bottom littered with rocks and dried mud. At its edge, half hidden by weeds, was a bundle of cloth, a jacket, torn and stained with the same red smudge. Sarah dropped to her knees, grabbing it. "It's Mia's," she said, her voice breaking. "She was wearing it tonight." Ethan's face paled. "Okay, this is bad. Really bad." He spun, scanning the field. "We're out in the open. If someone's watching." Clara's voice was steady, cutting through the panic. "Look at the ground." She pointed to a set of footprints, large, heavy, with a deep tread, leading from the ditch toward a cluster of trees at the field's edge. Beside them was another tire track, wider than the one near the silo, as if a larger vehicle had passed through. Jake's heart sank. The trees marked the boundary of his land, where it met Old Man Carver's property. Carver, a reclusive farmer, hadn't been seen in months, his fields left fallow. Jake had assumed he was sick, or maybe dead, but now he wondered. Could Carver be involved? The thought felt wrong. Carver was a loner, not a kidnapper, but the tracks didn't lie. "We need to check Carver's place," Jake said, his voice tight. "It's the only lead we've got." He glanced at the jacket in Sarah's hands, then at the trees, where a faint light flickered, just like the one in the pump house. It was brief, then gone, like a signal meant to be missed. Sarah stood, clutching the jacket. "If he's got Mia, I'm not waiting." She started toward the trees, her flashlight shaking but determined. Clara grabbed her arm. "Sarah, slow down. We don't know what's out there. Those cans, the map, the photo, this isn't random. Someone's planning something." Ethan nodded, his stick raised. "Yeah, and we're walking right into it. This feels like a trap." Jake's mind churned. The photo, the notebook, the MC key, none of it pointed to Mia directly, but it all pointed to his family, his land. He thought of the map's drop marking, the chemical cans, the tunnel. Was this about smuggling? Theft? Something buried on the farm? And where did Mia fit in? He pushed the questions down, focusing on the light in the trees. "We go to Carver's," he said. "But we stay sharp. No rushing in." As they moved toward the trees, the cornfields rustled, the sound masking a faint snap, a twig, maybe, or something heavier. Jake spun, his flashlight catching nothing but stalks. The light in the trees flickered again, then went out. A low, guttural moan echoed from the darkness, closer than before, freezing them in their tracks. The Nebraska night was a living thing, its breath rustling through the cornfields, carrying the faint moan that stopped Jake Miller and his friends in their tracks. The cluster of trees at the edge of the northern field loomed ahead, their gnarled branches clawing at the moonlit sky. The flicker of light they'd seen was gone, but the memory of it burned in Jake's mind, as did the guttural sound, too human, too close. Sarah gripped Mia's torn jacket, her knuckles white, her flashlight beam darting across the stalks. Ethan's stick trembled in his hand, his usual bravado buried under the weight of the unknown. Clara, her dark eyes sharp, marked their path with another charcoal arrow on a nearby rock, her hand steady despite the fear etched on her face. Jake's heart pounded as he led them toward the trees, the bolt cutter heavy in his grip. The clues were piling up: Mia's locket, the cryptic notebook, the MC key, the map with its drop marking, the chemical cans in the tunnel. And now, the photograph of a man who looked like him, hidden in a secret chamber on his family's land. It was no coincidence. This was about the farm, about his grandfather's secrets, and Mia had stumbled into it. But the moan, the footprints leading to Old Man Carver's property, the flickering light, it all pointed to something bigger, something alive and moving in the dark. "Stay close," Jake whispered, his voice barely audible over the rustling corn. The air was thick with the scent of alfalfa and that sharp, chemical tang that clung to their clothes. The trees were only 50 yards away, but each step felt like wading through quicksand. The moan came again, softer now, from the direction of the trees. Sarah's breath hitched, and she pushed forward, ignoring Jake's warning glance. "That's her," Sarah said, her voice cracking. "It has to be Mia." She clutched the jacket tighter, as if it could anchor her to hope. Ethan grabbed her arm, his eyes wide. "Sarah, slow down. We don't know what's out there. That light, those tracks, it's like someone's playing with us." His voice was low, almost a hiss, his gaze flicking to the shadows. Clara nodded, her charcoal smudging her fingers as she spoke. "He's right. The map, the cans, the tunnel, someone set this up. It's too organized. We're walking into their game." She glanced at Jake, her expression pleading. "What if Carver's not just a neighbor? What if he's part of this?" Jake's jaw tightened. Old Man Carver had always been a loner, his farm a patchwork of neglected fields and crumbling sheds. Jake hadn't seen him in months, hadn't thought much of it, rural life bred distance. But the tire tracks, the moan, the light on Carver's land, it was too much to ignore. He thought of the notebook in his pocket, its warning: keep it hidden. They'll come for it. Was Carver one of they? Or was he another victim, like Mia? "We'll find out," Jake said, his voice firm. "But we stick together. No running off." He led them through the last row of corn, the trees closing in, their branches casting jagged shadows. The ground was uneven, littered with roots and rocks. The tire tracks they'd seen in the ditch continued here, deeper now, leading to a small clearing just beyond the trees. In its center stood a shed, its wooden walls weathered but intact, its door slightly ajar. No light came from within, but the air carried a faint hum, like machinery idling. Jake stopped, his flashlight sweeping the clearing. The tracks ended at the shed, and beside them were more footprints, large, heavy, with the same deep tread they'd seen before. But there was something else, a smaller print, faint and smudged, matching Mia's sneaker tread. His stomach twisted. "She was here," he said, pointing to the print. "Recently." Sarah rushed to the shed, ignoring Ethan's protest. "Mia," she called, her voice echoing in the quiet. She pushed the door open, its hinges groaning. Jake followed, his bolt cutter raised, the others close behind. The shed was small, its air thick with the smell of oil and something sweeter, like rotting fruit. Shelves lined the walls, cluttered with tools, jars, and more of those unmarked cans from the tunnel. A single bulb hung from the ceiling, unlit but warm to the touch, as if it had been on moments ago. Clara's flashlight caught a glint on the floor, a small, silver bracelet, its clasp broken. Sarah gasped, grabbing it. "This is Mia's too. She was wearing it by the fire." Her voice broke, tears welling. "She's leaving us a trail." Jake's eyes narrowed. The bracelet, the locket, the jacket, it was too convenient, too deliberate. He thought of the shadow in the tunnel, the flickering lights, the moan. "Or someone's leaving it for us," he said, his voice low. He scanned the shed, noticing a trapdoor in the corner, its edges flush with the dirt floor. It was locked with a heavy padlock, older than the one on the silo but just as sturdy. The MC key in Sarah's pocket didn't fit when she tried it, her hands shaking with frustration. Ethan paced, his stick tapping the ground. This is insane. Tunnels, sheds, secret boxes, what the hell is going on? Is this about drugs? Smuggling? What's in those cans? He kicked a shelf, sending a jar crashing to the floor. It shattered, releasing a sickly sweet smell that made them all gag. Jake crouched, examining the spilled liquid. It wasn't fuel or paint, it was thicker, almost syrupy, with a chemical bite that burned his nose. He thought of the map's drop marking, the crates in the tunnel. This wasn't just about Mia anymore. Someone was using his land, hiding something valuable, or dangerous. And Mia had seen it. Before he could speak, Clara froze, her flashlight aimed at the trapdoor. "Listen," she whispered. From below came a faint tapping, rhythmic and deliberate, like a code. It stopped, then started again, faster. Sarah dropped to her knees, pressing her ear to the trapdoor. "It's her. I know it's her." She pounded on the wood, shouting, "Mia, we're here." The tapping stopped. Silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. Then, a voice, low, muffled, barely audible, came from below. Help, it was weak, but unmistakable. "Mia." Jake's heart leapt. He grabbed the bolt cutter, attacking the padlock with desperate force. The metal groaned, then snapped, and he yanked the trapdoor open, revealing a dark, narrow shaft with a ladder descending into shadow. The chemical smell was overpowering now, mixed with something new, sweat, fear, human. Sarah started to climb down, but Jake stopped her. "Me first. We don't know what's waiting." He descended, the ladder creaking under his weight. The shaft opened into a small, concrete room, its walls damp and stained. In the corner, tied to a chair, was Mia, her face pale, her clothes torn, her dark eyes wide with terror. Her mouth was gagged, but she nodded frantically when she saw Jake. He rushed to her, cutting the ropes with the bolt cutter, his hands shaking. "Mia, you're okay," he said, pulling the gag free. She gasped, her voice hoarse. They took me. I saw something I shouldn't have." Sarah climbed down, tears streaming as she hugged Mia. Ethan and Clara followed, their faces a mix of relief and dread. "Who took you?" Sarah demanded. "What did you see?" Mia's eyes darted to the ladder, her voice trembling. "I went to the truck, saw someone by the barn. They were carrying cans, like the ones in the tunnel. I followed them, thought it was nothing, but," she swallowed, her hands shaking. "They grabbed me. Said I'd ruin everything. They locked me here, but I heard them talking, something about a deal, a drop tonight." Jake's mind raced. The drop on the map. The cans. The photograph. This was bigger than he'd imagined, a smuggling operation, maybe, using his farm as a hub. But the photograph, the MC engraving, it tied back to his family. His grandfather's secrets weren't just paranoia, they were dangerous. Before he could ask more, a loud thud echoed from above. The trapdoor slammed shut, plunging them into darkness except for their faltering flashlights. Footsteps, heavy, deliberate, moved across the shed's floor, followed by the scrape of metal. A low chuckle drifted down, chilling Jake's blood. "You shouldn't have come looking," a voice said, rough and unfamiliar. The footsteps retreated, and a new sound followed, a hiss, like gas escaping. The chemical smell grew stronger, burning their lungs. Mia coughed, her eyes watering. "They're sealing us in," she whispered. Jake grabbed the ladder, climbing to the trapdoor. It wouldn't budge, locked from above. His flashlight flickered, barely illuminating the room. The air was thick, their breaths shallow. He looked at Mia, at the fear in her eyes, and then at the others, trapped in this concrete tomb. The notebook in his pocket felt like a lead weight. Whatever his grandfather had hidden, it was worth killing for, and they were running out of time. The concrete room beneath the shed was a suffocating cage, the air thick with the chemical stench that burned Jake Miller's lungs. The trapdoor above was sealed, the heavy footsteps and chilling chuckle of their unseen captor fading into the night. Mia, freed from her ropes, leaned against Sarah, her face pale and her breath shallow. Ethan gripped his stick, his eyes darting to the faltering beams of their flashlights. Clara, her hands smudged with charcoal, pressed against the wall, her gaze fixed on the ladder as if willing it to yield. The hiss of escaping gas grew louder, a sinister whisper that promised to choke them all. Jake's heart pounded, his mind racing through the clues that had led them here, Mia's disappearance, the notebook's cryptic warning, "Keep it hidden. They'll come for it, the photograph of a man who looked like him, the MC key, the map's drop marking, and the crates of chemical cans hidden across his family's farm. This was no random crime. Someone was using the Miller land for something illegal, smuggling, maybe, or worse, and Mia had seen it. Now, they were all trapped, buried beneath the earth, with the air growing thinner by the second. "We're not dying here," Jake said, his voice cutting through the panic. He climbed the ladder again, slamming the bolt cutter against the trapdoor. The metal groaned but held. His flashlight flickered, its beam catching a faint seam in the concrete wall behind Mia, a crack, barely visible, running vertically like a hidden panel. He dropped back down, his calloused hands tracing the seam. It was too precise for a natural flaw. "Clara, your charcoal," he said, holding out his hand. She tossed it to him, her eyes wide with hope. He scratched at the seam, revealing a narrow gap, just wide enough to pry open. "There's a way out. Help me." Ethan and Sarah joined him, their fingers digging into the crack, pulling until a section of the wall shifted, revealing a low, dirt-packed tunnel. The chemical smell was weaker here, replaced by the damp, earthy scent of the prairie. Mia coughed, her voice hoarse. "They said the drop was tonight. In the northern field. They didn't expect anyone to find this place." She clutched Sarah's arm, her eyes haunted. "They mentioned a name, Carver. Said he was handled." Jake's blood ran cold. Old Man Carver, the reclusive neighbor whose land bordered theirs. The tire tracks, the footprints leading to his property, it all pointed to him, but Mia's words suggested he wasn't the mastermind. Was he a partner? A victim? Jake thought of the photograph, the MC engraving, Martin Carver, or maybe Martin Miller, his grandfather. The pieces were falling together, but time was running out. They crawled through the tunnel, the wall so tight they scraped their shoulders. Jake led, his flashlight barely holding. The tunnel sloped upward, then opened into a shallow ditch in the northern field, hidden by a tangle of weeds. The cornfields stretched around them, their rustling stalks a restless chorus under the moonlight. The air was fresher here, but the chemical tang lingered, a reminder of the danger below. Sarah helped Mia stand, her face fierce with determination. "We need to find them. Stop this drop, whatever it is." Her voice shook, but her grip on Mia's arm was steady. Ethan scanned the field, his stick raised. "And what? Take on a bunch of smugglers? We're not cops, Sarah." His usual humor was gone, replaced by a raw edge of fear. Clara pointed to the ground, her artist's eye catching a detail. "Look, more tracks." Fresh tire marks, wider than before, led toward a cluster of silos at the edge of Carver's land, their rusted shapes glinting faintly. A low hum carried on the wind, like an engine idling. Jake's stomach twisted. The drop was happening now. He pulled the notebook from his pocket, flipping to the page with the cryptic warning. Below it, in the same slanted handwriting, was a list of dates, tonight's among them, and coordinates matching the silos. His grandfather's paranoia, his hidden keys and locked sheds, suddenly made sense. Martin Miller had known something was happening on the farm, something worth hiding. Had he been involved? Or was he trying to stop it? "We go to the silos," Jake said, his voice firm. "That's where they are. We get proof, then we get out and call the sheriff." He looked at Mia, her pale face resolute despite her ordeal. "Can you make it?" She nodded, her jaw set. "I'm not staying behind." They moved through the corn, their steps muffled by the soft earth. The silos loomed closer, three rusted giants surrounded by a chain-link fence. A pickup truck was parked nearby, its bed loaded with crates like the ones in the tunnel. Two figures moved in the shadows, their voices low but urgent. Jake crouched, signaling the others to stay down. His flashlight was dead now, but the moonlight was enough to see one of the figures, a tall, lean man with a scar across his cheek, carrying a crate toward a second truck pulling up. "That's him," Mia whispered, her voice trembling. "The one who grabbed me." Jake's grip tightened on the bolt cutter. He recognized the man, not by name, but by sight. He'd seen him once, months ago, at Carver's gate, delivering supplies. A hired hand, maybe, or something more. The second figure was shorter, hooded, their face hidden. They moved quickly, loading crates, their movements practiced. Sarah's eyes burned with anger. "We need to do something. Now." Clara grabbed her arm. "Wait. We need evidence. If we rush in, they'll get away." She pulled out her phone, its battery low but enough to snap photos of the trucks and crates. The flash was off, but the shutter's soft click felt deafening in the quiet. The hooded figure froze, their head snapping toward the corn. "Someone's here," they hissed, their voice low and female. Jake's blood ran cold. He knew that voice, Lila Carver, Old Man Carver's daughter, who'd left town years ago after a falling out. She was back, and she was part of this. The scarred man drew a gun, scanning the field. "Find them," Lila snapped, pulling a flashlight from her pocket. Its beam cut through the corn, inches from where Jake and the others crouched. Ethan's breath hitched, and Mia clamped a hand over her mouth, stifling a cough. Jake's mind raced. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and trapped in the open. But he knew this land, every ditch, every hiding spot. He gestured toward a nearby irrigation ditch, its banks thick with weeds. They crawled, hearts pounding, as Lila and the scarred man fanned out, their flashlight beams slicing closer. The ditch was shallow but enough to hide them. Jake's eyes caught a glint in the dirt, an old, rusted key, another of his grandfather's, half buried. He grabbed it, his fingers brushing a small, metal plate beneath the soil. It was a hatch, hidden under years of overgrowth, marked with MC. He fitted the key, his hand steady despite the chaos. The hatch opened silently, revealing a narrow shaft leading to another underground chamber. Inside, he whispered, urging the others down. Mia went first, then Sarah, Clara, and Ethan, their movements frantic but quiet. Jake followed, pulling the hatch shut just as Lila's flashlight swept over the ditch. The chamber below was small, its walls lined with shelves of dusty jars and a single crate, identical to the ones above. A faded ledger sat on a shelf, its pages yellowed but legible. Jake opened it, his flashlight long dead, but Clara's phone lit the page. It was his grandfather's handwriting, detailing shipments, dates, quantities, and a name, Carver. The truth hit like a punch. Martin Miller and Old Man Carver had been partners, smuggling chemicals through the farm decades ago. The tunnels, the hidden chambers, it was their operation, buried when Martin died and Carver went reclusive. Lila must have found it, restarted it, using the farm's isolation to her advantage. Mia's disappearance was a mistake, she'd seen Lila moving crates, and they'd panicked. A loud thud shook the chamber. The hatch above rattled, voices shouting. "They're in there." Lila's voice, sharp with fury. The scarred man's gun clicked, and a bullet pinged off the hatch, the sound deafening in the confined space. Jake grabbed the crate, prying it open. Inside were more cans, their labels peeled off, but a small, handwritten note was tucked inside. "Destroy it. They can't know." His grandfather's final act, a warning to end it. Jake's eyes met Mia's, then Sarah's, Ethan's, and Clara's. They were scared, but they were together, and that was enough. "Light it," Jake said, pulling a lighter from his pocket. Ethan hesitated, then nodded, grabbing a jar of the syrupy chemical. They smashed it against the wall, the liquid pooling. Jake flicked the lighter, and the chamber erupted in flame, the fire racing up the shelves. They climbed back through the hatch, the heat at their backs, the shouts of Lila and her accomplice drowned by the roar. The field was chaos, flames licking the silos, the trucks speeding away. Jake and the others ran, the cornfields shielding them as sirens wailed in the distance. Someone, maybe a neighbor hearing the fire, had called the sheriff. The group collapsed at the edge of the farm, coughing, alive. Days later, the police found Lila and the scarred man, their operation exposed. Carver was dead, killed months ago when he refused to restart the smuggling. The farm was scarred but standing, its secrets burned away. Jake sat by the fire pit, the notebook in his hands, its pages now ash. Mia, recovering, squeezed his shoulder. "You saved us," she said. Jake shook his head. "We saved each other." The lesson was clear, trust, forged in the dark, was stronger than any secret. The farm was his again, but it was their bond, tested by fire, that would endure.